Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second episode of our King of Malifica painting adventure. Now, our mission, if we choose to accept it, which we have no choice but to accept, is to have a whole bunch of this main body done and at least this side of our disc ready, because pretty much by the end of this episode, this has to be ready to glue on in position, as does this. That's going to make things tricky down the road, but it's one of those things where it just kind of has to happen. It will not be ideal, but it just kind of has to happen with all these things that intertwine and interlock. We really don't have a choice. So in this, obviously, we're going to be making some things brighter so that it's more in conjunction with what we have here. So we'll probably have this within sight, and you can see we've got some of the warmer greens in there. That's what's going to happen here. We were just literally just throwing in some colors here just to see what we could do. Now, some of this is dry, some of it's wetter. Let's do a quick little test here. So that's pretty well dry. And this is just less than 24 hours. Actually, way less than 24 hours. It's more like 20 hours later. All of this is pretty much, I mean, you can see the only paint that's coming off is actually the fresh paint that I put over here. Maybe, I don't know, 5 hours ago, something like that. So what we've got to do is get this thing workable to the point where we can go in and stick him on his base. The wings not going to be attached, but at least the body has to be in some ways. Now I think we'll continue to use this as our holding point. We got to establish all of this glow over here. So look at here. Let's get this thing stuck on here if we can. Which way does this go? Like so. There we are. Now, some of that stuff's going to have to all be filed away because as you can see, there's going to have to be some plastic putty and probably actually that's going to maybe just have to be green stuff there. We'll see. It kind of depends. We're going to go back in and because I actually had to pry this off of here. So there's actually some glue that's getting in the way as well. Now you can see the phthalo green doesn't dry quite so quickly, but we have to get this on there because, man, eventually we have to see what we can do with this. And most likely that's going to have to be painted with acrylics just because of our deadline. We are going to feature several of these. We got our berry white right here. We've got our brilliant yellow hue, titanium white, cadmium pale. We also have some phthalo green. Might see some of this ultramarine violet. This is another one of those colors that I kind of treated myself to. I also have some of the Romber back out here, some of the Van Dyke brown. That's over on that same palette. I just thought it might be handy for you guys to just see the same layout of colors here. I did, oh, actually no, I didn't throw out the yellow ochre yet. Well, we will now. I also have some of that cadmium yellow light out here. Some of that is for, say, the teeth, the eyes, the books, hopefully stuff that we are going to get to. We did put some of the Fanchon red back out there. That's sitting over here. There's some Terra Russo over there. As I said, we might add some more things as we move along. Now, I think the first thing we are actually going to hit when we get back to our actual painting process is going to be this. It's going to be this. And actually, I'm just going to get in here so I can still remove some of this. That's how dry it is, but I can actually remove some of that. Here, let's get ourselves another sponge. I'm just looking at getting rid of the excess here. So now I can really come in here and boom, hit this pretty hard with some colors. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump into some of our cadmium green, and that's genuine cadmium green light, some of our barite green, and our lighter colors here, and we're going to do that next. let's jump into this now at some of those lighter colors that we were talking about. And remember, with the oils, it's not about the layering. We skip layers with the oils. That's the whole reason why we're using them. If we had to just layer up the same way as this was just acrylics, well, it wouldn't necessarily be worth all of the extra trouble. Now we are going to start in with some lighter stuff down here. I'd say, focus on the core first. Look at this. There's still wet paint in there. Now it's not quite as, well, obviously nowhere near as wet as it may have been, say, well, basically, I'd say about 23-ish hours, 22, 23 hours ago. Now we applied some pretty heavy colors here. It wasn't really thinned down all that much. That's the reason why this is still wet as, say, opposed to the main body. And even out here, we're still getting a little bit of a, look at that. You can see the paint that's coming off on here. Might as well use what's left of that color out here on the perimeter. And this doesn't have to be anything final here either, what we're putting on here now. This doesn't have to be the last thing, but I need to get it to a certain point before we stick this baby on there. Same thing with the body. Doesn't have to be finished, especially those, well, I don't know how easy some of those external surfaces are going to be to reach, given the fact there's a big old pole and a bunch of demons around it. So we're going to have to, well, do our best. There's kind of no, when you got things like this, there's no true ideal solution. You just kind of manage. Now that's a green that's been lightened an awful lot here. Let's get some of our berry white green in here. Because if we're going to have a lot of this reflected light onto our the demons, the poles or columns, and the critter, we're going to need this to be light enough. We do have some of our phthalo green over here. And this is the Williamsburg phthalo green. I've just realized that the only thing that I have that kind of resembles phthalo green is the kind of faux phthalo green from the starter set, otherwise known as Viridian Green Hue. So that might be another color that I experiment with from another brand, maybe a Gamlin. So I think that already, and hopefully the white balance that we reset in the last episode also makes this a little bit easier to see. Now we've got to thin this down here because I'm looking for this to actually dry a little bit faster. Now again, it gets kind of messy after this because we are going to have to attach this, and some of the paint's still going to be wet. Let's just say some areas will be sacrificed. That's not just okay because it's oils. I've had to do it all the time with acrylic stuff. I've had to paint things and go, oh, well, yeah, so sad I painted that because now it's about to get destroyed as I have to attach this piece because there was no way to paint things while it was attached. You can see there's a bit of a color shift here. Yeah, I think you can see the yellowness there. This white balance that I had to reset, and this is just more for folks that are thinking of trying to either do classes or whatever, streaming things, filming. It is shifted very much to the extreme. I'm really shocked as I look at that. I say, oh my gosh, that is really, it's pushed to a degree I've never pushed the white balance before. Look at that. See, it's a nice little addition here. See, it kind of, all of a sudden, it went from looking a little bit dry and a little bit crispy to, oh, look at that. Now it's starting to blend more like what you would anticipate. Back in here with some of our slightly lighter. We're going to really go bold in here. Basically, what I wanted to do was just sort of restore some of the liquidity to this. There will be, well, there's going to be some shiny artifacts as well. And then you also have to ask yourself, well, how much of this can you actually see? Because once there's going to be a lot of stuff in the way here. I'll put it that way. Sometimes you're almost better off. I'm trying to even think of the right way to phrase this. Sort of exaggerating something that's going to be almost hidden. Maybe you give it a little bit more contour, or you make it a little bit darker, or maybe you make it a little bit lighter, since it is going to be hidden, and you just won't be able to get that good view and see, well, what the heck is that really? Sometimes you are actually better off sort of exaggerating something. If you could get a clear view of it, you maybe don't take it that far. And hopefully that makes some sense. Now, again, there's no way around it. There's going to be, and some of this, I may have to file this away. There's going to be glue getting on there. It is what it is. And I'm intending for most of this area out here is probably going to have to get hit with acrylic paints. So if you're wondering, okay, acrylic paints, what's he going to use? I'm going to be using the Reaper Clear and Liner paints because those are going to be the closest to replicate what we're doing here with the oils. Well, guess what? There is a phthalo green clear paint. There is the clear yellow. You have the clear blue. You have a clear phthalo blue. And we have the clear purple. So a lot of the colors that are here in oils are kind of represented in those Reaper Clears. I might even go, I can go a lot lighter here. I am going to throw in just a wee touch of that faux cadmium light just to keep it a little bit on the cooler side, or warmer side, sorry. It was going to get a little bit cool even with that lemon yellow that I threw in there. Back up to some of our perimeter over here, which at a bit of a disadvantage because we can sort of only work one side of it. I see I need to get into that trench a little bit more here. We will snag ourselves a smaller brush here, potentially even this, our 0. It is also thinned down. Now at this point it might be a little tough for you to see because there's a wee bit of glossiness going on. That lets me get down in there with some lighter colors. I also don't want to forget some of the purple that's out here. Let's see if we can't get a few of our lighter strains here. And this is not unusual to see little bits and bobs of your sponges. So sometimes you just kind of have to dig those out of an area. It happens. It is not a big deal. I guess I'm just trying to stress, well, less stress, less fear. I sense an awful lot of fear just about a lot of things these days, and maybe if I don't know, just think of the oils as this nice relaxing thing that's a fun thing, nothing to be tense about, even if it's a new thing, and new things can be scary. Yeah, no, okay, let's soften that up a wee bit. And then it also gets to a point where you have to start doing some darker things. Let's see what we can do in terms of some darker things. Now we've got our Egyptian violet out here. I have me some phthalo green. Let's see what we can do in here. That's as much to just kind of restore some of the, again, some of the workability of this. Make it a little bit wetter. Don't want it too wet, and then of course I'm gonna have to be filing some of that off. We are gonna be doing the glue green stuff glue thing for sure on this because there's just a lot to fill in. See, I don't mind a little bit of my purple color getting out there. It does sort of turn blue-ish, kind of more of a jade, I guess. This is the thing you just kind of can't do with the acrylics. Look at that. So now it's almost like one of those one of those lollipop things or something with the swirled colors and all that. It's kind of funny. It entertains me. Now I have to also be aware. Don't want this to get too muddy. I don't want that to be muddy. I can always go back over it and say, maybe glaze some stuff in there, even some of the Egyptian violet. But here, this is why, again, I didn't want to get too concerned with making that lighter and lighter and lighter because I knew this was coming as well. So this starts to provide some of the dark, and it's also giving us some of the color of our big old critter there, our king. Maybe a touch of the phthalo green here. Just a little bit of it. And even a little bit in here. It's fairly slight, but look at how that blends. Look at that. And it just kind of blends into nothingness there. These are the sort of complex blends that just as I think about trying to do these in the usual acrylics, I say, oh, okay, that would be, I could maybe do small areas of it at a time to try and get the wet into wet mode, but that would be challenging to say the least. This, a little bit less challenging. It's essentially using the medium in the way it's meant for. So we've lightened things, we've darkened things. And even I think out here on some of the perimeter edges, this doesn't even have to be the final say. I think, well, again, it won't be easy, but I think we can reach this part. Now, that's just getting too dirty right there. I tried mixing some of that barite green with the purple, and it just kind of went gray. We don't want gray necessarily. It's not what we're looking for. But this, ironically enough, sort of needs some object source lighting on it. Crazy as that sounds. And that's this part over here, as if it's being illuminated by our glow. So we're going to take some of our phthalo green. It's mixed with some of that yellow. And the other thing too, I can only do so much of this before I see it attached, and there's really not too much point in doing a lot of things down there, because guess what? That might all get filed away or primed over or whatever. And that'll be brush on primer to the rescue. It's the same Steiner res we used to prime this in the first place. We'll just be using a good old-fashioned hairy stick to apply it in that area over the parts where we've kind of filed things down. So there's going to be a little bit of addition and destruction, but we haven't spent terribly long anyways, so filing away a little bit of this, not a big deal. Not a big deal. Back to a little bit more of this in our, where's my phthalo green here? And still trying to dry that out as much as I can. I just wiped it on my chamois sponge. Take some of the paint away. Look at that. A couple of brush strokes that already picked up the purple there. And as I said, we will be much more targeted. Speaking of targeting things, what I'm going to do is go even a bit lighter. So there's some of my cadmium green. That's mixed with the white, some of the yellow, and I think now I actually have to go thicker. I believe this needs to be thicker to get it to stick. We'll find out as soon as we place this here. That was the correct thickness because it sticks. And I'm just trying to get a couple of really light areas here at the core of our disc, and then maybe a few things out here. So again, we'll just position that, blend some of it away, a little here. So I know it's kind of hard to say. I think if I hold it this way, you get a little less of your reflection. Here's a couple more. It's constant refinement. You just sort of slam everything in place, kind of rough, and then you be a little bit more delicate. And look, remember how this was kind of dry for it? Look at all this fun stuff that's going on right here. And we haven't even, here, let's grab a blending brush and got this where you can see it. Look at that. See how much, look at this. Look at that. Absolutely love that. It looks like it is some kind of swirled paint or candy or something. I don't know. It's just very interesting. I'll do the same over here. I'm just going to shove that brush down. And again, this is our poor man's Winsor Newton, which means it can sort of take some of that punishment. Now, hopefully this is not too thin. No, not too thin. You can see how this starts to bring out some of these shapes here. So I'll just place it like so. We'll find our blending brush again. And then we just fade this out. Look at that. Nice little fade there. And we'll continue with this out here. Don't care if it mixes with some of that phthalo green that's already there. Might even use this as my blending brush. See, now that it looks like a back glow where the creature itself or his body that emerges from this is kind of your dark part, and then the glow around it sort of delineates what's the critter and what's your disc here, your portal. I guess I should call it a portal instead of just a disc. I don't know why I keep calling it a disc. You can see how that's very direct though. One brush stroke, then we go back, and then we blend it. Not going after it over and over and over again. To this right along here. So this is my area of my target here is here. So I press that brush and look at how it kind of deforms. And you say, look at all that purple in there. Oh my gosh, look at that. But that's what a sable brush will do. So that's not going to work with one of your synthetics. Every tool has its place. Oh, look at this. That went from this really bright highlight to perfectly blended into our little dark swirl here. So that was pretty much just one brush stroke and then go back, hit it a couple of times with the blending brush, and all is well. All is magic. As I see just a couple of other areas that we'll try this. So next up, this is where things get real interesting now, because at this point we're gonna have to go into the main body of the king, and we're gonna have to just first off, I don't want to say, well, I'm gonna have to say it, dry brush some of the glow onto him. Just if anything else, as a little bit of a signpost to say no detail here. Don't paint a bunch of stuff here that's just going to end up getting painted over by green glow anyway. So that will be the next, for the most part, that's what your next segment's going to be. Is we are going to be painting this glow onto the body here. And as you can see, it's going to really catch along this face here, maybe even some here too. So there's just all of this. Why sit here and paint a bunch of stuff when it's going to get hit real hard by some of that greenish glow? So that is what we're going to do. And again, since this is mostly dry, it's going to be pretty easy for me to handle. So we'll do that next. We are back, and it's time to get into some of our indications of our lights on this thing. This is where it gets interesting. And now, this is where I don't mind the fact that our pre-glaze has actually dried a bit on us, because I was kind of hoping, see, this is where I'm going to get that advantage of the not dry brush, because let's say I end up with too much texture somewhere that looks like a dry brush. Guess what? We got a blending brush here, and then we just say, oh yeah, well, we just got rid of all the dry brush texture. So, and you can see this looks like we're adding lights to this. We're really not adding much in the way of lights to this. And this is a really dark color. It's a really dark color. But this is where all I'm interested in here, at least now in this first phase of slapping some paint on here, my main interest is just to say paint nothing else here. Just think about the greenish glow here. So like here maybe that's about the extent of it, or a little bit here. Now remember we also have that lantern over here. Now that is hitting the wing, so this will be sort of minimal here. I'm looking at the, yeah, that's sort of blocked there, so we only will do this here. It's really convenient because there's an awful lot of stuff on here that would be just a lot to deal with, shall we say, and we sort of get ourselves a little bit of a free pass on a lot of this texture down here. And like I said, this is nowhere near as light as it can go. We could go lighter with this. We'll go this far here. I'm going to go over to the other side now here. Obviously here, I'm going to say that's probably, well, for what it's worth in shadow. I also think this is going to line up pretty close color-wise with what we just did on our portal/disc. And here we've got a decent amount of that green already there. And you can see by the way I'm holding this why we're going to have to get this baby attached, because I can't really hold it like this and be painting little tiny details on this right here. That's just not going to work. Is it going to be extremely difficult? Oh yeah. I mean, the other thing I could do maybe is stick some blue tack here and then put this on something to hold it. That's just, it doesn't really matter, because when this thing gets stuck on there, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of stuff gets scraped, and it wouldn't matter if it was acrylics or oils. Either way, it doesn't really matter. Something on this is going to get dinged up in the process of trying to attach these figures. It always happens. I don't care what medium I'm using. Sometimes there's colorful metaphors being uttered at the same time because things aren't necessarily cooperating as they should, or at least as you would hope. You can see that we're also trying to get some variation here. Some of it, more of that. You can see a little bit more of the cadmium green, that yellowish light green gets in there. Some parts of it, that cooler green. More adjustments await when this is attached. There's no doubt about it. Now at first, still have to decide over there. Is that going to be tongues, flames, whatever? This, I'm just going to pop in a little bit of stuff here, and I'm going to grab our little roundel here and see. All right, what does that reach? Yeah, sort of here. I'm just thinking of what's the farthest or the furthest, farther, furthest, whatever. What I am going to do is get some of the paint out of this brush, because woof, there's purple in here, there's all kinds of stuff in here. Just going to get that out of there best as we can. Don't want to make that very wet. And now we're going to get a little bit lighter here. Oh man, touch of that cadmium green. And this is where we have our gentle grip on the brush. Remember, caress the brush, don't crush the brush. And look at that. I mean, that's a big deal right there. That's substantially lighter, and yet nowhere near a white. I mean, look at that compared to white, which is fine because in those latter stages, now I have a little bit of wiggle room. You can see how it's picking up that darker stuff. It's not all entirely dry. It's drier, not entirely dry. So what I think I will do is go after some of these areas. Once we do this, I'm going to hit areas like the book, some of these other interior spaces, maybe his face, because that's not really going to be influenced by any of this. And it's these type of interior things. I would like all this stuff and like the mouth here, because look, my hand is not going to touch it no matter what. So I want to get some of these interior detail things done, because once he's glued on there, my guess is those become a real challenge, and I'm going to try and cut down on some of that challenge. As I do this, I'm really glad that I didn't follow the initial thought that the demon guys or flayed guys holding the books should be glowing red. Even if that was just a very deep glowing red, that probably wouldn't have been very fun to have all of that glow. I mean, love me some OSL, even for me. I mean, it would be neat because the entire miniature would be nothing but OSL. It would actually make it way easier to paint. Not sure if it would make it as interesting, though. Fun as it sounds. Fun as that might sound. Okay, have we gone the extent of how far? I'm still thinking that this is going to pick up some of that green. Well, in any case, if we're doing gold here or bronze or whatever, we're going to want a little green into that anyways. So just an indication of something over there. Once again, you know what? I've got this. We'll go here with a even lighter, but it's got to be dry. There does come a certain point, however, no matter how much I'm gently trying to dust this on there, it may not actually stick anymore, just by virtue of, well, all the paint is the same thickness. So see how much lighter this all is. This, I think for sure, is going to catch some light. Part of it is there's a lot of texture here that can be captured. Still, it's picking up that purple color. Gotta go back, get some fresh colors. And by fresh, even this is kind of now a little bit sullied, we'll say. Now, I could have other palettes out here with, or even more fresh brushes, but at a certain point, it's just, yeah, whatever. Now, I'm not quite sure how much lighter we want to get on the back of his hands, feet, claws. Probably not too much. Because there's, remember that little, his feather assembly there that's also going to go underneath his body. So yeah, there's a lot going on. This is going to be an interesting area over here. I'm thinking now as some of my wings, I might have to go back in there and do a little bit more on the object source lighting on the base of the wing that sits down over here. Again, sending myself a little bit of message to future self to say, you know what? Maybe don't paint that part quite so much. That's for something that I thought was pretty well dry. You can see, and this is why our little deadline says, well, yeah, at a certain point you will just have to change over to acrylics. Back in here. That's nice and soft. So before I get too involved with more of this, I'm going to bring out our little portal again. And we'll dry fit this as best as we can. And I'm going to see if this is going to work here. This is tricky. This is very tricky, but however, I think it must be done. I'm just going to try and sync these up. Again, a lot of that stuff may end up being gone just because of our work that we're going to have to do with the glue and the green stuff and all that kind of stuff. But this, I think, gives me a little better handle on what happens out here. Okay, we'll set this back out of our way. I'm going to have to wipe off this brush again. That's a little less paint on there. There's just getting to be too much paint on there, period. I guess this is another area where I could hold it and still do a lot of things. So back to some lighter stuff here, and this is a slight little touch of my thinner there. We'll find out if that was too much. In a hurry. Won't take very long. Nope, that was just right. Look again how soft of a grip we have, how far back our hands are on that handle. Nice and easy. And areas like this, I don't even know if I can see that. When that thing gets stuck on there, I just don't know if I can even see what the heck's happening here. Maybe I can. And our next segment, I think what we'll tackle is some of this stuff here, some of the deep interior work, and also start to think about some of the skin tone that's got to go on here. That's why we have the Terra Rosa out there. That's why the Fanchon Red is out there. Because remember, look at that reference right there. We got all this purple sitting here. An awful lot of purple sitting there. We need to start eliminating some of that purple. We did it on one of the wings, and we'll do that again, especially up in here. I mean, all of that really has to be a skin tone. But we want that purple showing through. That's where I was tempted to bring out the ultramarine violet, but maybe. Yeah, I need a little more of that to help this flow again. Maybe I'll just see how far the Egyptian violet can take us to get that purple in the skin tone. And these anyways, I mean, quite literally, if we're going to do these, might as well. I got the color here. Might as well do this. There's a whole bunch of big old, look at that. There's still a bunch of wet paint down there. Look at that. Still a bunch of wet paint. Now, again, there's a bunch of eyes, and here, I learned my lesson, A from the other one. where there's a bunch of eyes I painted, and I said, wait a minute, you can't even see this. It's almost drawing attention where you don't want the attention to be anyways. These guys, they'll have to wait for sure. Wow, there's an armpit eyeball there. Okay. Wasn't really ready for that. Go back here into our lighter green. And I'm going to have to be a little bit more careful here. I've kind of getting a little bit casual. I got sort of used to some of that paint being drier. And now we've added a bunch of wet paint to it. We've got these crazy, his innards kind of falling out here. I'll catch a couple of lights on these. We got some eyes going over here. There's a lot of eyes on this side. They're just not quite so big as on the other side. Do we do any more? Now we'll just looking up here. That's his. We'll hit that with some of our gold too there, I think. Actually, where there on the other one where there was a big eye, there's actually a wing now. So I'm looking around for that eye thing. Where the heck is that? Was over here. Yeah, I won't do too much on the leg here because we're just going to have to grab that and hang on to it for dear life. So we'll see that's it with our green. So our next thing, we'll start with skin tone on here. We might also do things like the book. There's some lights over here too potentially. I don't know. Maybe they're just supposed to be smoke. We'll see what we do over here too. But let's get into here, see what we can do with some skin tone, and maybe start to get some reddish color into the mouths over here. Now we're going to do that next. Let's see what's going to happen with our skin tone here. And I'm just going to bring up my other reference so I can see it a little bit easier on my other screen here. Now, there's a lot of purples in the background, but I'm actually seeing a skin tone that has some. I'm glad I got that yellow ochre out there. That's gonna have to play a part in our skin tones here. We're gonna begin. Even throw a little bit yellow ochre in that. So our Terra Rosa, some of that off-white yellow here. And in we go. Let's do this thing. It's gonna be so weird to see this guy with something that resembles actual skin tone here. But it's still picking up some of the purple, which is good. That is what I was hoping for. I didn't know if it would. Oh boy, it's so hard to tell if that's just like skin there, but yeah, see that's blending very nicely. I'm really glad that I hit this. I actually did this a few hours ago because it just needed to be in a certain condition here. This is very nice. This is not very similar to what we've kind of been doing all along. Now these are gonna, I'm just looking at those. Oh, I can probably get some nice purples. And I'm looking at the eyes here. There's actually some interesting, well, they're all kind of different. Some of those are actually very bluish green. So I might change a few of these, actually hit them with some of the phthalo green maybe. And you can see we're really working with a relatively dark color here, but it seems It appears to be pretty light because of just how dark our original color is that we laid down. Okay, I'm just gonna keep hanging on to that lower leg there for dear life. Sadly, we're just going to be wiping away most of the paint on that, but that is what happened for anyone that has seen the the other streams that I did of the original King of Malefica. I think that was the Ascendant version versus the Resplendent version that we have here. This leg pretty much had almost all of the paint taken. This thing had a lot of the paint taken away just because I was using it as basically a handhold. More of our, and this, when I call it a lighter tone, that is, I mean, it's not really all that light. It's really just a mid-tone. But I think we're letting some of that purple show through. That is good. That's what I'm really wanting. Now, I want you to see something here as I just desperately try and get this. Now that's a whole different deal there. Almost don't mind that getting to be a little bit green. Now these, I'd like to actually have that be more of a purple so that the scrolls show up. But in just a second here, I would like you to see what I did on one of the wings. It was a little bit of a test to see if I wanted this much of the skin tone or to be this light out here. And sometimes I just have to do some tests of things. Is that still blending even now? Set this down here. Where is that one? Here it is. So that's kind of what we're after here, and you can see, because that's what attaches right over here. And once that gets placed down there, guess what? We're going to have to make some adjustments to that too. We'll have to make those adjustments. And again, look at how the blue underneath there, and it's mixing. See, it still is mixing. This creates a whole new skin tone right over there, an entirely new skin tone, instead of me having to glaze additional colors in there. I would have done something in there and just, I don't know, it would have been something I wouldn't have wanted to have to do. Now I can still glaze back in here too, but still picking up some of that original glaze, especially in the crevices. There's a lot of commonality to the colors here. I just, as I look at that reference and such, now there might be a little bit more of a reddish tone on that the piece that I showed you. Maybe I'll have to make changes to that. I think it's because see how the purple is mixing here? That's probably what was happening with that other piece. That same scumbling motion to encourage the, here, let's get our even lighter skin tone here. Where are we at? So I'm glad I had some of the yellow ochre out there because I think it needed some of that. Yeah, that's so very different. I think on the other, whoops, I just have to remember to hold this leg here. On the other one, there was a lot of blues up here, lots of purple. This is so different. And I'll still go back and do some glazing here as well. But I just love the fact that this sort of purple grayish color, it's being naturally imparted into the skin tones here. I don't have to put that in after the fact. That could maybe accentuate it. This really does start to take on a different appearance here. It really does. Yeah. A little bit more here. Now, what's going to happen? This is going to be tricky. This is going to be tricky. Because just trying to squeeze the brush into here, I think what's going to happen in this area, because it's sort of, well, we've got these sort of competing mouths over here. I'm probably going to actually do some glazing of the Fanchon red in there. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of mouths over here. So they're, wow, look at all that purple that's on that brush. Speaking of which, let's grab just a touch of that. Now I just did put a little bit of my thinner in there. Look at the impact that has as that really starts to cover. So doesn't take much. You put a little bit of that thinner in there, all of a sudden, I think we'll carry it out this way too. I mean, I don't care if some of these eyes get covered here. What's the big deal? And again, the tentacles, it's kind of hard to say where should they be purple? Where should they be more of a skin tone? Again, I have partial concept art. I'm trying to match that as best as I can. More of my skin tone here. Wow, I can see some of the purple actually getting into my mix on the palette even. So yeah, more mouths over here, or teeth at least. I don't know if they're necessarily mouths, but there's certainly teeth there. Yeah, I think we're just going to do a lot of glazing of some reds into that. Again, doing what I can on this tentacle right here. Letting things blend where I can let them blend. Don't want to get too engaged with that because, well, I'm probably going to have to be sticking my hand on there. There's another area here, boy, I don't know if you can even see this. It's really tough to reach. I didn't necessarily want to have that book over there, but for other reasons, it was just easier to deal with it having the book there. And with so many things that are going to be in the way of this, it just really doesn't matter. There's already things here that I've basically spent too much time messing around with that will pretty much be wiped out. and never seen once things are assembled. There's already stuff I'm looking at. I go, well, yeah, I could have saved a little time there. Oh, yeah, I could have saved a little time over there, too. See, yeah, it even gets a little bit of greenishness to it. I'm even going to go in here with some of my yellow ochre. This is some of my, more of the Terrarossa here. And I'm just going to hit these real quick before I forget. I mean, I know this is mostly about the skin tone here, but, well, if you paint, if the color goes somewhere, it must go over, and you got to work on the whole thing at once. When I have that right color, I'm going to use it. If I say, you know what, that could really go here into some of these metal surfaces, well, I'm gonna use that. But now we're gonna wander back over here to our Terrarossa. Let's hit this side of whatever this is. Don't know what that is. But I like the fact that there's some of that green still sitting there underneath. As I look at my rough, there's purples, there's greens. Let's hit this stuff up here. I'm going to toss in a little touch of my yellow here. And that is our faux cadmium yellow light. And it's a real, speaking of light, it's a light application right there. Not a bunch. Gonna hit this book over here. We'll hit the back of this. I really, actually, the green in the armor here serves even more purpose than, say, it did on the other guy, because the skin tone was so much darker on the other one that it was fairly easy to get the contrast. Here, not so much. Not so much. So I'm going to even lighten that up a bit more here. We'll hit this in a few spots. Part of this also has to do with, well, can the skin tone be all that much lighter than, say, the light areas on his armor? So again, it's sort of marking things in advance. We'll just, yeah, I don't want to necessarily think about that as something that is a light, as in like a glowing object source. But I want some shape there anyway. Now I'm going to go back here. We're going to go into our Terrarossa once again. Still going to sneak in a little bit of that ochre. See what we can do on his face. And we're going to stay with him for our next segment. We're going to continue to add some of these lighter tones. We will see what sort of glazing we want to do into these kind of recessed areas here. But the first thing that actually has to happen is we continue to lighten those. So we'll just kind of continue this process moving forward, then dive into some kind of, and by glazing, it doesn't necessarily have to be that sort of pin line, panel line wash where it's really fluid and the paint just flows. It doesn't have to be that. Again, we gentle application here. We don't have to be hammering away at this. And actually, when you've got something like this, where you're sort of working on parts that have had a chance to dry out a little bit, you can do, there's some things you can do with the glazing that you ordinarily maybe wouldn't do with the your typical wet into wet type of glazing. That's the whole reason I wanted to do this. I really was hoping that you could see. We did it on the sisters, but obviously smaller scale. I thought, maybe if you can see that on a grand scale, something like this, it might be interesting, something dramatic. Actually, this I wasn't sure. After my other one, I wasn't really sure if I was gonna be all that thrilled with just like, oh yeah, a skin tone, yay. But actually, it's kind of okay with that. It does bring out some other things that the darker skin tone just didn't. Just I think another thing it does show that it doesn't necessarily. I mean, you can paint things different colors. Doesn't always just have to be what you saw in a reference or okay, that it's this army and it always gets painted this way. Now I'm gonna go back down a little bit Terra Rosa over here. I'm gonna backtrack a bit. If we're gonna get down here, and I also don't want that to have too much of the skin tone here. But look how much of that purple it picks up. It's amazing. And over here, again, I'm predicting that that's going to get a little bit beat up over there when we try to put that new piece on. That'll be interesting. Back to our lighter tone here. Let's see what we're going to do. Let's get some of this paint out of the brush. Just wipe it with a paper towel. Let's see how much paint's actually in there. That's what just came out of here. And look, there's still more in there. Look at that. As dry as I'm trying to do this, you can see there's still more in there. Where's my... Here we go. I wanted to get some of that paint out of there because I would like to do some even lighter tones here. Where's my yellow ochre? And let's pick up some more light tones in here. Before we... Again, we're going to spend a decent amount of time in that next segment fooling around with the mouse here. It's going to be a lot of glazy things for sure. Yeah, see, I'm glad I've got the green that's in here. Even if I don't have any of the so-called green object source lighting, it's still kind of neat. And we're going to try and get some greens over here too into his skin. Down here, it's so much shadow. I don't see why I want to just, yeah. A lot of shadow there. Gonna do something here on the scrolls. Take some of that titanium white. It's got some of our cadmium yellow in it too. Let that blend. You know what? These things, I'm not even going to have those be lights. You know what? The heck with it. There's enough things that are glowy and lots of colors going on. We don't have to, everything doesn't have to be glowing. much as I like it, everything doesn't have to be glowing. Okay, go back over here. That's our titanium white, some of that cadmium yellow. Already starting to think about some of our metals here. Since we're not going to have that sort of glow on it like we did with the other one, with that glowing book nearby, I think we can, yeah, get some of that over here with our skull, whatever this thing is. Not quite sure. It's like an opposable bird skull instead of a thumb. And we might, after we put some of the greenish colors down in it, we might do a little bit of our blending brush routine as well. And that takes care of, yeah, we'll just say that takes care of this. And our next deal here, so many mouths, so many mouths. We'll get to those. We're going to hit all of these things next. Maybe some things in his hair, like the purple tentacles there, but lots of, you're going to see an awful lot of kind of reddish glazes. Some of this area back in here too. So yeah, we're going to be hitting it like this first to lighten some things up, and then going back in with some of those reddish glazes. And we're going to do that next. So we talked about doing some glazes, and we'll see what we can do with our reds here. Now, we're going to use, we've got the fanchon red over here. We have some brown matter right here. And we're going to go these two together. What the fanchon red does, it sort of lends a little bit of opacity to this. Now, I'm sorry about the glove. I just kind of had to do it because what was happening is this was almost slipping out of my hands. Obviously because of the oil paint there, so I just had to do something. Now remember, the brown matter, that's going to be more of a translucent color. Look what's happening here. So now we position some of that. I just grabbed a little bit of my thinner here. Just, I mean, a tiny little touch. So see how that flows a little bit more? So this part here was a little bit less liquid. Then I put more liquid as I go along. So I'm placing this here. You can see it has a little flow as it is, but then it has more. This is just a tiny little touch of it. Let's see how that flows a little bit more now. Heck, I might even throw this over here. And I apologize for these having to be here, but if I'm going to set this thing down, I can't set it on the fuzzy stuff right here. It does really help as a backdrop, especially on these larger pieces like this. The downside is you need something that is not quite so absorbent to set it on. Speaking of which, we're going to set him down, and I would like to get some of my crimson back out here. Essentially, an alizarin crimson. This is the permanent crimson. That's just going to go over here in the corner. It's an intense color also, very translucent on its own, and that's going to make that, see, I need it to have a little bit more oomph, a little more life, and I think that's the trick there. I also need it to be a little bit darker. So you can see I'm going to go in here, I'm going to get some of that purple, some of my crimson. Oh, now we have something that's going to be really deep. There. Unfortunately, maybe now you can see it. Now this one, I got more of the liquid in there because just the angle of the brush, it's kind of hard to control here. So you can see we're getting a little bit of our liquid here, a little bit of that thinner, a little more to help it flow. See how that kind of goes into those crevices there? All right, I just wanted to get some of those taken care of. Let's just do the big stuff over here, shall we? We're going to use our somewhat more opaque, lighter version up here then. So I just grabbed a little bit of the touch of it there. Flows a little more. But I've also got my darker version over here. So we have a couple of translucent colors, but you can see they can cover pretty darn well, even as they glaze. That really starts, see, we're getting a whole different look here now. We'll continue here. Now this one it's one of our poor man's Winsor Newton Series 7s, but it's one of those that never really, who knows, maybe as it wears down some more, it gets a little bit nicer, but it never really did what some of the other ones do. So it's become kind of a glazing brush. Now, who knows, maybe that wears down some more of the hairs on it. That actually makes it more efficient for some other things. That has happened in the past, certainly. So you can see where I grab a little bit more of my, that's just straight up thinner there, but we already have paint on the brush. We already have paint on the surface. We can move that around. We can move this stuff around. I'm going to say that what I'm doing here is going to, I don't want to say take you maybe longer to grasp or longer to kind of master, because it is very different than what most people do with their glazing. Now, I kind of did this stuff already with the acrylic, so it's not all that much of a stretch. It's better because it does not leave the watermarks, and it has more capillary action than I can count on. But this is not all that unusual for me. It's not like this, I've never done something like this before. I think I can just do it on a much wider scale here because what the difference that the oils allow. Once again, we're gonna put a couple of strokes in here, then thinner, and then we sort of let it do its thing here. Now, this is our kind of more opaque, warmer addition here. A little bit of this thinner. Gotta let it flow and do its thing. If you force it, it's just not gonna work. Now, we're gonna go even more with a, look at this, so that's our Fanchon Red again. There are some other, say some of the, what are they, the Gamlin colors that I might just try and use one of those. Instead of using the Fanchon Red, I might just try and use one of the Gamlins that I think is kind of close to it as far as the opacity level and such. I'm not worried about the teeth getting covered up or anything along those lines. We'll be doing more stuff here, but just want to get this in place. Now let's do our darker, some of our darker stuff again. That's that brown matter. I mean, I suppose if I had my purple matter out, I guess I've been enjoying some of these other new colors here. I thought, well, okay, let's see. Can they also maybe do what the purple matter does, and then maybe you don't have to get that one too? Maybe if you have the violet and stuff like the crimson, then maybe you don't need the other one. Only one way to find out, though. And yeah, it does. I think it looks like the teeth are starting to show up more. And obviously, we're going to be painting those in more firmly. But I'm just thinking because of the all the light stuff that's going on with the skin, I'm going to leave the interior of these mouths that much darker, like way darker than I did the first time around. I think we need some areas of dark here. We got awful lot of light things going on now with the way this skin tone plays out. Now, this is, I think, a part of the gum line, I guess, that you're just not going to see too easily. It's covered up by a lot of stuff, so. But I am going to move that up here. We have our blending brush. See that? Now it's starting to integrate. We also have to figure out what's going to happen with this stuff here. Is that going to be ribs? What's going to be showing through there? Now this is a little bit of my more crimson. It's going to really boost that here. I know this is all about the mouths and everything, but while I've got this here, I also want to see what's going to happen with this. And we really can't take care of absolutely every single mouth on this because, well, there's one or two of them out here, and we've got this going too. We got all kinds of mouths everywhere. Now this is once more the kind of the fanchon red. It's sort of like a Terra Rosa in its consistency. It has that opacity, but it's not real thick. It has that utility that I like so much. You hear me mention that all the time, like a lot. To me, it's important. It's important that it can do more than just, okay, this one thing. It has to be more, well, at least for it to be a color that I would recommend a lot, where I would just say, okay, yeah, it's nice to have it for this, or, well, you'd really like to have this. This could really give you a hand. And now I'm almost starting to collect as many of these as, well, maybe not quite as many as, say, my craft brushes, but I'm starting to collect a bunch of these just to have on hand for things more like this, where I can just use it as a glazing brush. If it gets beat up, I don't care. Look at that. See that? This is what I was kind of hoping you could see. I was really hoping you might be able to see me do something more like this, as opposed to, like, if you see me only doing that initial glaze and then painting over the top of it. If you only ever see that and never really see me work with oils that have dried and do some of this type of glazing here, I don't know. I think to me, you're kind of missing out on something that could be really important. More of that crimson, and to me, because of conversations that I've had with people, even before I started doing this tonight, it was that whole idea of, all these colors. I'm surprised they don't cover. They didn't do this, and I said, yes, they can. Just not in the way that you're used to with, say, the acrylic side of things. They can actually be very much of a staining color that covers like crazy. I mean, look at how nice and rich and dark these are, but because we're using them in this manner, you can see what the kind of coverage that we're getting. Look at that. Look at how dark that is. And that's actually glazed on there. So as I carry this out, look at how dark that can be. Yeah, look at that. But if you're thinking of them like an acrylic that you can just paint over the top of something, you're gonna run into a little disappointment there. It will not quite go as you hope. Now, I do recommend sometimes having maybe a couple of these little containers. It's a water bottle lid. That's all it is. Maybe have a couple of containers because this one I will prefer to keep that one as clean as possible. Now, what I don't really have is an umber out here, and I'm just going to try and make that. I got indigo, I've got terra rosa. I'm going to see what I can craft out of this. I want to have this on hand for something like this. Because that was like a little bit too much like skin tone there. Just even that much. And look at this, back to my skin tone again here. So in here, look at this. Couple little dots of that. Look at how that just sort of settles in all those little cracks there. I'm not even going to deal with the interior of that mouth there. We'll mess with the exterior, well, the gum line here. Get done in a semi-glazed fashion. Now we also have, look at this, we have some of this lighter color here. That's where, I think that was some of our initial skin color that we were using. I'm going to go back to this tone, and we're going to get that down into here. Oh yeah, this little crazy face right here. Forgot all about that one. Gonna go back to my really rich dark over here. Those teeth, I'll just paint those back in. That's sometimes it's just easier. Now I'm gonna go, I think, even more opaque here. Ooh, even a touch of the cadmium red. And hopefully this shows up. Hopefully you can see this. I'm just gonna go, look at this. I did this on the other one. That was kind of fun. So in some ways, it's sort of morphing that into a bit of a gum line. And then, that's why I wanted to experiment up here with this, because I want to see, yeah, I want to see what happens with this. Our little areas of entrails and exposed things here. Couple of shots right here. Couple of more here. Oh, we have some more mouths out there. Some of that brown matter, some of the fanchon red. I'm just gonna let this sink down into here. We'll hit that with a lighter stuff to get the teeth in there. Let's go back around here again. Crimson, some of our lovely Egyptian violet. And that doesn't flow enough, so I'm going to grab some of my liquid here, and that all of a sudden makes that flow. It just wasn't before, wasn't enough liquid in it. You can see it, and it's just a dot of it. That's all it is, and now it moves. Because I just want to be able to touch that to the surface and have it do its thing. So we put a couple of dots of paint there. Now a couple dots of the liquid here. And it moves. Just like we wanted it to. Okay, gonna go back over here. We got our semi-opaque. That's the fun thing with the oils. I think when you opaque glaze with oils, and you can do it with the acrylics, sort of, but certainly not to the degree that you can with the oils. That's something that I've noticed. And it makes sense because with the intensity of the oils and the way the pigments work, you can have an opaque color, like even a cadmium red orange or something like that. It can be really thin down, but it can still pack a punch and still cover. Acrylics, that's not really their thing. That's not necessarily how they're meant to be used. Again, not going to mess around too much down there because of, well, where our hands got to go. Now, this is back into the brown matter. You can see we sort of have three different sort of color tones at work here for stuff like the mouths. Not just warmer or cooler, but some darker, some lighter, some more opaque, some more transparent. Now ours are more opaque, slightly more opaque, and again, taking some of that liquid here, and we just thin that down. We let it kind of mix. Why not? See that? Back to some more of our little glaziness over here. Here's that umber again. Well, our fake burnt umber that we made. And we're going to get some of that into whatever this is. Don't even know what it is. Really don't know. So this is a case of when people say, well, what colors do I have to have? Well, I don't know. That the Terra Rosa and the indigo together are making a pretty interesting color that I kind of like, to the point where, oh, and this is a thing too. Okay, let's say that just becomes a color that I really, really love, and I think it can be effective in a lot of things. What's to stop me from mixing the two of these together and just making this a color, and making like an oil, well, my own little mixed oil out of it with the pre-thinning? Why not do that? I mean, there's no reason why not to. I'm looking. Ooh, well, oh, what the heck? We shall just live a little dangerously down here. This is something that I'm gonna have to take care of when it's on the base. Now with the other one, I could reach this. I think I'll still be able to reach this. I don't think there's going to be the demon guys in the way of this. I might find out otherwise the hard way, but I think I can get to this. So again, we're back over here. Got some opaque stuff happening. And there. Now that's a little bit drier, that area, mostly because I've been wiping away the paint with my hand. And some more of that's going to get wiped out just because. I don't mind a little bit of this even getting around some of our eyes here. Like it's a whole different it's a whole different piece. No sense in trying to do everything the same as the last one. I do like the idea of getting some more of this opaque red into there. All right. Now, that pretty much takes care of it. Next up, I think we'll do stuff with the armor. Actually, kind of focus on some of these tentacles here. Maybe get some green in the skin tone. Yeah, I think that's what we're going to do next here. I was tempted to put the color on here, but I'm just looking at this going, yeah, my hand's got to rest here, so I don't know if that's the greatest plan in the universe right there. So we'll see if we can get some greens into these skin tones. I'm also just throwing a little bit of this. And it kind of almost gives it that, again, that kind of opened up sort of flayed surface. I think that is supposed to be some muscles there. So not bad that we're doing this. Okay, I think that, yeah, we might even throw a little bit more of this down in here too while we're at that. But we'll focus kind of on this area up here next. Yeah, especially the face. Yeah, we'll just kind of lock into this area next. See what we can do up here. We're going to work a few more colors into our skin tones here. And we talked about the greens. So let's see what we can do in regards to some greens. Now we're going to have just a couple of different types out here. We're going to have this. Let's take a little touch of our Fanchon red over here. So I'm just making a couple of different little colors for myself. And that is our fun berry white green. And we're also maybe even going to see what happens with a couple of glazes of that in some places. But you can see it's kind of a lighter glaze. It's not necessarily flowing all over the place. It's pretty targeted, and I also don't mind if it starts to blend with what's already here. Might even get a little bit of that green into our metals. It's what I see on the reference in some places. So, and here, this could be interesting. We'll just throw some of that out here. We have our blending brush. And all of a sudden, get that nice little subtle area we've got going there. It takes very little. Can you see this? I hope you can. Maybe not. But again, it's more of this green here. I try and get some of this into the neck, down into here. Once again, blending brush. And like I said, I've got a couple of different greens. This is actually it's relatively dark by comparison. This is some of the fun stuff we couldn't do here on the last one. So it's almost, I don't want to say decayed flesh, but it's looking a little pecked there. And it's not supposed to overwhelm either. It's a suggestion maybe. We're going to go back in with some lighter skin tones in here. Part of this is to kind of create some darker tones, but also to shift those darker colored tones. We're putting a little green in here now. And again, the key was to have some of the red as well. And now you can see with some of that lighter red that we glazed in here, and now if we've got this greenish color by comparison next to it, starts to give it a little extra boost there. We can put some of this green out here too. A little bit of a skin tone there. To swing this around. See what we can add in here. So the skin tone, as far as value goes, yeah, that's getting darker, but you see much more of a color change here because of the green that's in there than anything else. And we'll probably try and get some of that out here. And again, this is one of those more beat up kind of faux Winsor Newton Series 7s. So I don't mind. There's some kind of really rough treatment this is getting. But what I did with the other one, and all of a sudden it became once it lost a bunch of hairs from all the rough treatment, it became a really fabulous brush. So sort of hoping the same happens here. But look at this. Now these darker areas here that were basically on this bird head, those lines were just way too dark. Why? Because that was still our original glaze there. Now, while we've kept them relatively dark, we have more of a color in there. And now it has that greenish look to it. See if we can do some more here too. And sneak a little bit of that into the skin out here maybe. Now, this is an area I think that's really going to benefit from it back here. Because it needs, yes, it needs to stay dark. Also going to get to do some blending back here. Wasn't really able to do that before. Okay. Some more back. And we've got this red. See, I'm mixing the red with that green. Look at that. Look at that. Now, speaking of green, I don't know, maybe for whatever reason, I'm going to take some of this. Here, I'm going to purple in there too. And maybe some of this. Almost, gee whiz, what would you say, like a patina? More of a glaze, though. It's got a little bit of the phthalo in there. This is, all of a sudden, this is very reptilian compared to some of the other, well, most of the other parts of the body. In fact, almost every other part of the body. So I didn't really get to do this on the other one either. I thought that could maybe be a interesting thing here. Again, it is no texture, anything remotely like this anywhere else on the figure. I'm going to get some more of the, now this is our kind of that green-red mix here. We're not losing our so-called regular skin tone. I think we're kind of enhancing it now because it was getting a little bit, we don't want to have too much of the same now. I just went back into my red over here because I forgot about that little sort of a jawline type thing. I'm going to see what happens with a little bit of Terra Russa and some of our phthalo green. Just, I want to see what happens. I don't know exactly what I'm going to get out of that. It's, in some ways, it's a bit more like raw umber as opposed to burnt umber. Has a little bit of a greenish tint to it. All right, now I thought of that for some parts of the armor in the book here, at least for some of the darker sort of glazes. Okay. In his book here. Also, his scrolls here. See, it's almost a bit like the olive green in some ways. So that's kind of a nifty green that I'm going to have to remember. And we're just going to throw this out here. Almost maybe like it's some kind of staining or whatever. Take our blending brush as we always do, and we'll just move it around enough to blend that. Let's see what we can do. Gonna throw it even more indigo into that. Again, into the book here. Then, remember this, our opaque red. Well, yeah, still kind of opaque at this point. We are going to do a little bit of a glaze, and then we're actually going to throw some of this in the book here. Not so much like we're trying to do lighting, but maybe, I don't think of this almost like it's some kind of skin or whatever. I'm just trying to throw a few more colors into this book here before, I don't want it to get too boring. Too simplified in terms of its colors. More, I'm going to go with this green once again here. Now, it has a fair amount of red in it. I keep calling it green. There's actually still a fair amount of red into this. And like I said, we're going to go back in here with some more lights too. But there it is. I'm running out of a few places to put my hand. So I don't know, that gives that to me is some separation that it can use. Maybe get a little bit more of our pinkish color out there. As much as I wanted to have the purples in here, I like having this green. And well, it's really more of a greenish gray because, well, what do green and purple do? They essentially create for you a nice little bit of a gray. You know what? I might, if I can, I'm going to see if I can't grab a little bit of raw umber here. Or raw umber, Van Dyke Brown, one or the other. Let's just see if we can't get a little bit of raw umber out here. It's another one I'm going to have to mix. Unfortunately, we're just pretty much on our last dregs there with the raw umber. I was hoping, well, you know what? In some ways, that's kind of a little bit like the colors we were just making. And it's also mixing in with some other lighter tones. Just trying to get a little bit of a more separation here. Speaking of separation, we need some just straight up darks. It's going to be our indigo here. What the heck? Maybe even let some of the phthalo green get in there. And this is more of a liquid, as you can see. I looked over here and I went, wait a second. Wait a second. We need some serious darks over here. We have some dark midtones. We don't have any real darks. And you can see this dark has some color to it. It's not just some flat old brown. It's actually got a lot of green in it. Yeah, and to me, that greenish color is going to help more as a shadow than if it was black, it wouldn't really do much of anything. Yeah, it would be a dark, and that's about it. Even going to throw a touch of this into this area here. Since my fingers are going up here, I think I can get away with that. Speaking of more dark, we're going to make these. Talked about getting some more dark in here. That's what we're doing now. Okay. There. Now I may like the teeth in that kind of stuff and some of these eyes. I think I will just try to. I may just have to. Just thinking of the timing of this. Yeah, I think I'll try and as much as I would really not want to do that, I think I may just have to attach this bad boy here before I do all the little eyes and such. It'll just be easier to hang on to. Some of that same green for whatever reason. I don't. Was there a specific reason why I just threw that really dark green there? Not necessarily. I just felt like I needed some nice rich darks in here. I had a lot of midtones happening. And because these are more of a glazing type of approach, this is the other reason why I don't like having the glove with all of this stuff around because, well, it's just going to get caught on the glove. Maybe I'll just get a little green on the edge of that. So in the time left in this segment here, I am going to see if I can get one of my, just a slightly better version of one of these. Here it is. So this one's a bit newer and also seems to have a little nicer edge to it. We're going to really find out now. So here's some of our lighter skin tone. We're going to start out thinner on that and see what happens. So it's for now it's covering. However, after that, I will have to go thicker. Let's go even a little bit, maybe lighter here. And now we'll just try to impress some, I suppose, highlights. in the skin tone here. Now, what I think I'll do in the segment after this is maybe I'll paint one or two of the eyes and some of the teeth, and you can kind of get an idea how that's going to work, because there's a whole bunch of them you will never ever see. They're completely obscured. So there's a bunch of those I'm just going to have to paint off camera. If you don't mind. As much as I like to show you, as I said, I like to show you as much as I can. Sometimes crazy things like this, well, you have to work within the boundaries of what's possible. Gonna get more of my lights over here. I think, yeah, you can see the greens that are in there now. Yeah. I didn't want to wipe those out. Here, we'll get some lighter skin tone here. That should make whatever kind of flayed flesh underneath here maybe stand out a bit more, perhaps. There we go. Let's move our way out here. Out onto our skin tone. Here, at least I'm just going to say that skin. I don't know if it is or not. I don't really know if anybody knows. I think it's just a mystery that'll never be solved. And what I am going to do is wait for, well, this don't necessarily be dry, but I'm going to let that skin, the layers of here on the skin, just kind of have a chance to set. Same thing with the hair. I will get some lighter colors on his neck, though. I don't really want to do a lot of adding lights back here because, well, I mean, it's sort of in shadow, plus any kind of light that would be back here. Well, there's the wings that would block it. There's also the object source lighting. So yeah, not going to do a lot back there. I am going to see if I can just take this and maybe see what I can add in his eyes. And then see if some of this can maybe go onto the skin too. Now, for a lot of the finer detail and all this, that's where we'll see our synthetic quad zeros pop up. Okay. So like I said, what we'll do is we'll do stuff like this. Just get some lighter colors in these eyes. We'll do some stuff on the teeth and in the mouth areas. And this, I don't even care if this just dries before the next time I can work on it. I just want that to be there, because if it's light like this, then I can glaze over it with the oils and do some really nifty stuff. That's I'm just kind of throwing some of this down here. Can you even see? Yeah, you can actually see that somehow. Okay. Maybe get a few lights in there. And we can still go lighter with the flesh, believe it or not. We can still go lighter with that. I haven't exhausted my options. couple more of my lighter skin tones. And there. And then maybe some out here, because we're also blending too with the colors that are out here. That's why I don't have to necessarily just think about that whole layering deal, right? Not layering, not doing the layers. Just bringing some of the skin out there. We've got plenty of wet paint over here that I think we can work with, do stuff with. Yeah, see that? I'll let the other existing colors kind of blend into that. What about his hand, fingers, things there? So that is, yeah, we're gonna, like I said, I will probably be doing a couple of these areas here where you just can't see things, or it's too hard to get to on camera. But the next thing we're gonna play with is stuff like this. Maybe these tongues here. Some of the teeth maybe start to, I'm not even gonna mess with the eyes just yet because they're too wet. Yeah, and I don't want to be handling this with all of those eyes being quite so wet. And we'll get to those guys next. Yeah, look at that. We have our greens in there. So that's some more developed flesh tones. Next up, we'll mess around with it in these areas and see what we can do there. Finally, we're going to get to some of the things like the teeth. And I think we're going to go with something a little bit different here. We're going to go with the yellow ochre and the white here. We'll start out with this brush, see if it works out okay. We may, yeah, see, it's an entirely different tip right there. It's the exact same manufacturer as the other one, but I'm sure the difference again between a $14, $13 brush and something that's more like $4 is going to be consistency. And you just might get some brushes that aren't quite as good as other ones. The level of liquid here is really going to be important because we want to get coverage, right? And we still can go lighter with this too. And then we also have to do some stuff in the gums. It's going to have to be lighter or darker, either way. And all of this is very much wet into wet. We're not just putting this over dry paint or anything of the sort. This is where we have to manage that whole difference in thickness. Is one really thicker than the other? And again, we've got these little tiny teeth over here. Like I said, seeing every single one of those being painted, probably not super important. You'll get the idea. I am just going to throw this here to mark the eyes. I keep wanting to go over by my skin tone there. Been over there so many times. So I think what we'll do is we'll focus on the teeth on this side here. Yeah. And it's even this is picking up some of the purple that's there. But I don't really remember I think this shape was changed. I don't really remember so many teeth all the way out here on the other one. There's just a whole bunch of little teeth. But look at this. See, this brush here is just sensational. The other brush, I just basically kind of had to sacrifice it. It wasn't really good for much of anything else except for doing some work that's kind of abusive, but yet still needs a very tight brush for it, or well, something a little more narrow in scope than, say, one of the craft brushes, because just where I needed to get to. We got some teeth over here. The ones that are in shadow here, it just doesn't make much sense to play with those. Now we're going to go into our couple of different colors here for our. Now I'm going to use more of the white here. So this makes it more of a cooler pink. Everything we'd done before was more of a warm pink, and the idea is here a cooler pink. To see how that skin tone is more of a warm color there. Maybe this is a little bit cooler, a little bit more towards the pink. We get a gum line here as opposed to just another skin line. And I do see a difference here. Yeah. So this is the next thing we've got to do here with our, and I see I missed a glaze right there. Yeah, there's a big old portion of that needed to be glazed. We'll go back and do that. So once like even here, we're kind of putting some, I don't want to say necessarily highlights on these gum lines, but we are getting those a little lighter and a different color temperature, ever so slightly towards the cool side of things. That's why I kept throwing some of the, was that the yellow ochre in the skin tone? Remember the Terra Rosa? All of that is just, that's to get that warmer skin tone happening. And then the greens, well, all of that gets this a little bit of separation from these gum lines. And it's going to be important because, well, I mean, these are pretty substantial. There's kind of no way around these. Now I can see I'm going to have to do a little blending brush stuff right here. So now the things like this eye here, that starts to stand out a bit more. What's going to happen down here? Maybe we get some of this cooler pink down here too. And there's plenty of the red already sitting here that I can grab. And even this is still mixing. See, look at how it's mixing. You can tell that got darker there. It's mixing with our glaze. Back here, I can see the purple actually getting into that. See, see, now I got a little hole in my glove there. That is why I just try not to be, well, especially with these things, with all the spikes and everything else. It's why I've kind of abandoned the gloves. I'm going to get a little bit of this pink out into here. Is there a specific reason why? Not necessarily. But we're getting almost more into the, like the tentacles here as opposed to, say, the skin tone here. And I am trying to, oh, what would we say? Kind of introduce that, kind of fade the two areas together, I suppose. Now, hopefully it's handy for you to be able to see that little cup over there. Now, I've already spilled it twice. That is the reason why it doesn't usually stay there. So if you're wondering why you don't usually see that on screen, that is why, because it's been knocked over twice. This is even a little bit darker. And I'm counting on that to mix with the colors that I put in there. Although I very efficiently sort of got it to the right consistency to where it's sticking and it's not really mixing so much, which is kind of funny. Back to this lighter pink now. Okay, so I think what we're going to have to do is I will do, like I said, the mouths over here. It's the exact same thing that I'm doing on this side. I'll do those, and then I'll see if I can get this stuck onto the figure or onto the base, if that is practical. Now, as much as I like to show you that, there is no way I can be. There's too many things I've got to manage to do that, and I have it on camera. I can maybe do the wings and some of the other additional parts, kind of like what we did with the Queen of Onslaught, where I think I just showed a few key parts that were glued on. I'm also starting to think about doing something like this. I just don't want to forget, so don't mind me. Just going to indicate this here so I don't forget. All right, that helps. Let's go a little bit more with our lighter pinks here. Now this might have to be thicker because we've been going thinner. Now we might have to go thicker. See what happens. Well, it is sticking. So I was correct on my level of thickness because we're getting that to stick fairly nicely. So I think what's going to happen then in episode 3, we'll continue with developing these two areas here, the main body and that portal. I don't know. I was thinking of actually breaking out just very briefly the acrylics to do like a glaze on the one side of that, but no, we'll have to just wait till that is attached. It's going to be really difficult to keep a handle on this. So that's why I'm thinking we have to do before. I know I wanted to be able to attach that at the end of this episode, but that's just not possible, unfortunately. I wish it was. But there's too many things here. I believe they're going to be way too hard to reach otherwise. Now we're going to go backtrack here. We've got our darker glaze still. Well, even just getting it this close to being able to glue it on there. And who knows, maybe it does actually work out and I can still glue this on. And still be able to get to all the things that I need to reach. That's the big question. What else? It's also getting to be very difficult to hold this just on this end out here. Now, this either needs to be, I got to either go lighter or darker in here. Look at this. That needs to be lighter or darker. So first, I'm going to go with my lighter pink here. And then I might grab the quadruple zero here, wherever that is. Crimson, something nice and dark, hopefully, here. Okay, I think that's about where we want it. And now we're going to get some separation here. Because again, that's looking a little bit fuzzy there. And this, I think, is going to do the job. Here again, see that there's just not enough difference between those. And we're not just, it's not a solid outline. Not a solid outline. So we kind of skipped it here. We did it here. We did it here. We sort of skipped that area. Because it was just a solid line. Remember, we want shapes, not lines. Now it's got to be thinner, I believe. And this is, again, something that's really translucent, this color here. Not every single tooth is going to get this darker treatment here, but just some. Those really start to stand out. And basically what you're seeing here, that's what I've got to do on all the other mouths. And it would just be, well, it would be hard to film for one thing, and it would be hours of just watching me do teeth here. And I think there's other stuff on this because it is so different than the other one. And if you want to watch me paint lots and lots of teeth, you just have to head on over to the Twitch channel, and you'll get hours and hours of me painting teeth and eyes. Okay. Because this is just going to be too wet to be able to do something as aggressive and violent as trying to glue that onto the... What I'm hoping is actually I don't have to glue that back disc on right away. That's my hope. It would be nice not to have that on there, because then I think that'll really interfere with me or add just a whole bunch of extra weight. Which is why I was thinking in the next one, I could potentially just throw that sort of a couple of the initial glazes with the acrylics on there. So again, we're going back to our yellow ochre, a little bit of our white over here. Because that's a tooth over there, and I see some other teeth here. Now, either that's not thick or thin enough, or it's too thick. It's one or the other. I'm going to do this. If it sticks, then I know one way or another. So it seems to be sticking here. I guess I just maybe had it too thick. This is why I say there is no formula. There's no way I can tell you how thick or thin you need to have your paint. That's all entirely up to you, and you would know way better than me how thick or whatever your previous layer of paint was. I can't tell you that. Now, the more you do it, the easier it's going to be to remember those kind of things. Okay. Did we get some darks up the... Yeah, let's do that. Couple more darks in here, and then we're going to go back to our lights. So you can see, and I don't have a fan anywhere close to me here, and it's still blowing this stuff around. Which I wonder... See, in the wintertime, it still dries... What would you say? Any artificial drying is going to be through all of the dry air in the house because of the heater going on all the time, because it's going to be cold. So, because I know there's been a few questions, well, does it make a difference summer or winter? As I just add a little pink there. Does it make a difference whether, if it's more humid or not? I haven't been able to tell. I would say, you know, basically wind is going to help dry things. So there's obviously some wind blowing around in here, which just makes sense. I think this summer's been hot enough for everyone to kind of understand that. So we added some of our darks there. We're also going to pick up a bit of a light right there. But you can see how it kind of ends and it gets picked up again. You can see how we're starting to get some lights around these eyeballs too. So back to my lighter pink here again with the quad 0. That's the Cotman brush. So glad I didn't do too much paint on this tentacle again, just like the first time around. So yeah, starting to feel more of this type of pink, this cool, as opposed to the fleshy color. And I think this is another form of contrast that we're going to get over here too, around these eyes, is if they do have that sort of greenish tone to them, if they're right next to this pink, I think that should show up pretty well. All right, what's left of our time here? Let's see what I can do up here. Again, cooler pink. And sometimes I like to do these more of a purple color as opposed to kind of that classic reddish pink, but we have enough purples in other areas. Gonna let some of that pink get in here. Boy, this is I don't have very much of a grip at all on this on the figure or even on the brush. I'm just kind of bracing my elbow against the table here as best as I can. I have to admit that Fanchon, now that's actually in the Williamsburg starter set. I think last time I misspoke in the previous episode. That's just a starter set Fanchon red from the Williamsburg paint line there. And you know what? I'm even going to steal some of that pink color onto here, onto his hand. I can still go lighter. I'm also thinning this down. Again, this is that cooler red, not so much the warm red. I'm pretty sure on the previous one, oh good, that sticks. I went with more of there was a lot of the cadmium red scarlet in there, so more of an orange color. And this is, I think we're going to make another little change here, is we're just going to have this hand get more and more pink. Less of that flesh color. And now I think it starts to stand out from the rest of whatever this is. The mouth arm here. We'll take this up further. Get some of the white here. And remember, don't think about stair-stepping this a little bit at a time. Who knows, maybe just go real bold here and then just grab the blending brush and do the rest. Don't think about, well, I'll grab a little bit lighter, then a little bit lighter, then a little bit lighter. No, just get in there, do something bold. Here, I think I can grab this over here and Let's get this other side here. So I know this is kind of an unusual episode here. We don't have any really crisp conclusion necessarily. But I just want to say thanks again for the support. It really does make a huge difference. I don't even know if I would really be able to do as much of the oils if it wasn't for the support here on the page. In fact, I don't know. As much as I love the oils, I think I might not have been able to do as much, at least not dive into it the way I have. Here, look at that. Couple more of my pink things right here. And look again how far back my hand is on this brush. And look what this does right next to that green we talked about. And we can still definitely go lighter than this if we need to. Not sure if we really have to just yet. Look at, you can really see that, I think, here. Do we need some? Yeah, I'd like to, on the other side here, do the similar thing. If I can. And then we're going to get to some of our white here, some of our yellow. See if we can't do a couple last little. I'm seeing these teeth over here. Just like this. Back to my pink here again. Almost stuck my finger right on his face. And I'll let this carry a bit more into here too. We have that green right over here. Blending brush to scumble that ever so slightly. So I think we've gotten ourselves some fun things. Lots of different skin tones on this. Oh, even we've got our greens into here, but we're just gonna pick back up here. Next episode, we'll pick back up where we left off on him, because I think this is definitely going to be a four-part series for sure. So thanks again, everybody, and I'll catch you on episode 3.